The world's longest river is at the center of one of the most high-stakes geopolitical struggles of our time. At the heart of it stands Africa's largest dam, a mega-project with the power to light up millions of homes or ignite conflict. As Egypt threatens retaliation and Ethiopia surges ahead, one question hangs in the air. Can engineering ambition overcome decades of distrust? This is the story of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam and the battle for the Nile. In 1959, Egypt and Sudan signed an agreement that would define Nile politics for decades. The deal allocated 66% of the river's flow to Egypt, 22% to Sudan, and left the rest to evaporation, with nothing for the upstream countries. Crucially, Ethiopia, where most of the Nile's water actually originates, wasn't just excluded, it wasn't even consulted. Decades later, in 2011, Ethiopia began construction on what would become the most ambitious infrastructure project in its modern history, the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. Construction unfolded near the Sudanese border on the Blue Nile. In 2013, Ethiopia diverted the flow of the Blue Nile, which was a necessary step to begin construction on the dam's foundation. The move raised concerns downstream, especially in Egypt and Sudan, where water security is closely tied to the uninterrupted flow of the river. But while the decision drew media attention, it's actually a standard engineering practice. Diverting a river allows for the creation of a dry work area where the main structure can be safely built. The same method was used during the construction of the Hoover Dam, when the Colorado River was temporarily rerouted through diversion tunnels to enable foundation work. Today, the dam's foundation is anchored deep into bedrock. Over 10 million cubic meters of concrete make up its massive main wall, reinforced by saddle dams, spillways, and 2 power stations. It is the largest dam in Africa. The reservoir behind the dam is roughly the size of New York City and holds 74 billion cubic meters of water, enough to completely regulate the river's seasonal fluctuations. The dam itself is nearly twice as tall as the Golden Gate Bridge, reaching a height of 145 meters. It's designed to generate over 5,000 megawatts of electricity, more than twice Ethiopia's current national capacity of around 2,400 megawatts. This is more than just a dam. It's a national symbol, a turning point, and, depending on the perspective, the spark of a regional power struggle. Why does the dam matter so much to Ethiopia? The thing is, in Ethiopia, electricity isn't just scarce, it's unpredictable. As of 2023, 69 million Ethiopians still have no access to the power grid. And for those who do, electricity often gets cut without warning. In many cities, blackouts happen daily, sometimes lasting 8 to 12 hours. In rural areas, entire communities can be left without power for days, sometimes even weeks. Without stable electricity, factories can't operate, and agricultural products go unprocessed. Development without energy is like trying to run with your shoelaces tied together. That's why the dam matters not just as a source of power, but as a foundation for progress. And this is where the conflict begins. What Ethiopia sees as a vital pillar of economic growth, the downstream countries Sudan and Egypt perceive as a threat to their very existence. However, Egypt has taken a particularly forceful stance, viewing the dam as a threat to national survival. Cairo has repeatedly demanded a legally binding agreement to regulate the filling and operation of the dam. Ethiopia, in turn, has refused to commit to specific volumes of water release. Egypt brought the issue to the United Nations, calling for international intervention and accusing Ethiopia of threatening regional stability and violating international norms. At the height of tensions, Egyptian officials openly warned that all options are on the table. Media reports indicated that Egypt even considered military action, including the possibility of airstrikes on the dam. What is the reason behind Egypt's aggressive actions? The Egypt, a country that, on paper, stretches over 1 million square kilometers. But that figure is deceiving. In practice, only about 3% of this vast territory is habitable. The rest? A seemingly endless desert. And yet within this sea of sand, there's a single thread of green snaking its way northward through the Sahara. This is the Nile River. And for thousands of years, it has been the lifeline of Egypt. From hundreds of years, the Nile shaped Egyptian civilization. Its predictable flooding allowed early societies to thrive, grow crops, and build one of the most powerful empires the world had ever seen. But the river's significance didn't end with the pharaohs. Today, Egypt still relies on the Nile almost entirely. About 97% of the country's fresh water comes from this one river alone. And yet, what once was a symbol of abundance has become a symbol of constraint. In 1986, Egypt's population was just 50 million. As of 2025, it's projected to reach 116 million, more than doubling in just 4 decades. But while the number of people relying on the Nile has surged, the river itself has remained the same. In fact, in practical terms, it's shrinking. Since 1970, Egypt's annual per capita water availability has been cut in half. The United Nations defines water scarcity as having fewer than 1,000 cubic meters of water per person per year. In Egypt, that figure stands at just 570. This has real consequences. Agriculture suffers, food imports rise, and the government is forced to spend billions subsidizing basic staples. In cities like Cairo, where over 20 million people live, every drop of water flows from the Nile. Meanwhile, upstream developments like Ethiopia's Grand Renaissance Dam add geopolitical tension to an already fragile situation. But the core problem lies within Egypt itself. Too many people, too little water, and almost nowhere else to go. Meanwhile, the GERD has been filling slowly and intentionally since 2020. In July of that year, the first stage of water accumulation began, and by August, the water level had risen to 540 meters. Satellite images from early 2017 showed a barren valley. But 7 years later, in April 2024, that same view reveals a vast reservoir and a dramatically transformed landscape. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed recently announced that the dam will be fully inaugurated within the next 6 months. Yet despite years of diplomacy, no binding agreement has been reached. The latest round of talks collapsed in December 2023, with both sides accusing each other of refusing to compromise. But new science is beginning to shift the conversation. A peer-reviewed study published in Nature in 2024 analyzed the impacts of GERD on downstream water availability and found that even in times of drought, the dam's operation is unlikely to significantly affect the flow to Sudan, Egypt, provided it is managed transparently and cooperatively. In other words, the problem may not be the dam itself, but the trust deficit between the nations involved. Because at its core, GERD represents more than just concrete and turbines. It's a test of regional diplomacy in a climate-stressed world. Whether it becomes a symbol of shared progress or deepening division depends not on engineering, but on political will.